My name is Evelyn. I'm 28 years old, and my life looks perfect from the outside. A stable career, a loving husband, and a cozy home in a quiet neighborhood. It's the kind of life many people dream of, the kind of life I used to think I wanted. But dreams and reality don't always align. Every morning I wake up next to Lucas, my husband. The sunlight filters through the curtains, casting a warm glow across our bedroom. He sleeps peacefully, his breathing steady, his face calm. He looks content. But me, I stare at the ceiling, feeling the weight of another day pressing down on my chest. I should feel grateful. I should feel happy. Instead, I feel nothing. 1 year ago, I made a choice, a logical, reasonable choice. I married Lucas because it made sense. At the time, I convinced myself that love wasn't everything, that stability, kindness, and security mattered more. Lucas was the perfect man, on paper. He was patient, loyal, and dependable. He treated me with care and respect. But love was missing. I knew it before I walked down the aisle. I knew it when I stood in front of the mirror in my wedding dress, staring at my reflection, searching for excitement, for joy, for anything. I told myself it would come. I told myself I was just nervous. I told myself that love could grow. But deep down, I knew the truth. From the outside, nothing seems wrong. Lucas and I are that couple, the one that friends admire. We host dinner parties, we attend family gatherings, and we smile in pictures. We look happy. But behind closed doors, it's different. Lucas wraps his arms around me at night, and I don't pull away, but I don't lean in either. He kisses me before leaving for work, and I return the gesture, but my heart isn't in it. Every act of love from him feels like a gentle reminder of what I don't feel. I go through the motions. I do what a wife is supposed to do, but I am not the wife I should be. Lucas doesn't know, or maybe he does. Maybe he sees the way I hesitate before holding his hand. Maybe he notices the way I smile, but never with my eyes. Maybe he senses the distance, even when we're sitting side by side. But he never says anything. Maybe he doesn't want to believe it. Maybe, like me, he's hoping things will change. Or maybe he loves me enough to ignore the truth. I ask myself the same question every single day. Why did I say yes when I knew I didn't love him? Was it fear? Was it loneliness? Was it the pressure of watching my friends settle down while I remained lost? Or was it because Lucas was the kind of man who wouldn't break my heart? I had been in love before, the kind of love that consumes you, the kind that makes your heart race, your hands shake, your world tilt, the kind of love that gives you everything until it doesn't. I had given my heart away once, and it was returned to me in pieces. And after that, love felt dangerous. It felt reckless. It felt like something I couldn't afford to experience again. So when Lucas proposed, I said yes, not because I loved him, but because I knew he would never hurt me, and I thought that was enough. Some lies are loud, obvious, and undeniable. Others are quiet, subtle, and easy to ignore, until they aren't. This is the kind of lie that whispers to me every night as I lie next to Lucas, my back turned, my body tense. This is the kind of lie that follows me through the day, in the way I avoid eye contact when he tells me he loves me, in the way I force a smile when he surprises me with flowers. This is the kind of lie that slowly eats away at you. And I don't know how much longer I can keep pretending. Can love grow where it never existed? That's what I keep telling myself. That's what everyone told me. Love isn't always instant. Love can be built over time. Love is about commitment, not just passion. But what if that's not true? What if love isn't something you can force? What if staying in this marriage means slowly losing myself? What if the best thing I can do for both of us is walk away? I don't have the answers yet, but deep down I think I already know. The day I got married, everything looked perfect. The flowers, the candles, the soft music playing in the background. It was exactly the kind of wedding people dream about. Elegant, romantic, picture perfect. The kind of day little girls imagine when they think about love. But standing there in my white dress, holding on to my bouquet with hands that felt too cold, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Lucas stood at the end of the aisle, waiting for me. His face was full of hope, full of love. He looked at me like I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. I should have felt lucky. I should have felt my heart race with excitement. Instead, there was only stillness inside me. No rush of emotion, no nervous anticipation, just the unsettling awareness that I was about to say yes to something I wasn't sure I believed in. I took a slow breath, forcing my feet forward. One step, then another. My father held onto my arm tightly, his grip reassuring, as if he could feel the hesitation radiating from me. Guests turned their heads as I walked past, their faces glowing with joy. It was a celebration after all. A day of love, of commitment, of promises meant to last forever. I smiled because that's what I was supposed to do. Because in moments like this, you don't show doubt. The ceremony began, and everything moved in slow motion. The officiant spoke words that I barely heard, my mind too clouded with thoughts I wasn't supposed to have. Lucas squeezed my hands gently, his touch warm and grounding. He looked at me with so much certainty, so much trust, and for a moment, I wanted to believe in it. I wanted to believe that love could grow, that I would one day wake up and feel the same way about him, that I wasn't making a mistake. Then he started his vows. His voice was steady, filled with conviction. He spoke about how he had loved me for years, how he had always known I was the one. He promised to stand by me through everything, to be my partner, my best friend, and my home. His words were beautiful, sincere, full of everything I wished I could feel. When he finished, there were tears in the eyes of our guests, a quiet murmur of admiration for the depth of his love. Then it was my turn. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment press down on me. I had practiced these vows. I had rehearsed them in my head over and over, but suddenly they felt foreign, like words belonging to someone else. I opened my mouth, but for a second, nothing came out. I felt dozens of eyes watching me, waiting. I forced a breath. I promised to stand beside you. I promised to be your partner, your friend, your home. The words came out steady, just as I had rehearsed them. They sounded right. They sounded exactly as they should. But inside, something cracked. The weight of the ring as Lucas slid it onto my finger felt heavier than it should have, like a chain locking me into something I wasn't sure I could carry. The officiant announced us as husband and wife. Lucas leaned in for the kiss, and I let it happen. His lips were soft, familiar, but as they touched mine, something inside me froze. This was supposed to feel different. This was supposed to feel real, but it felt like a performance, like a moment I was watching from outside myself. The reception was filled with laughter, with music, with people celebrating the start of our life together. Friends toasted to our happiness, my parents beamed with pride, and Lucas never let go of my hand. I played my part. I smiled, I danced, I thanked people for their well wishes, but it all felt distant, like I was going through the motions of a role I hadn't truly accepted. At one point, Lucas pulled me aside, away from the crowd. His eyes searched mine. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded quickly, too quickly. "Yeah, just overwhelmed." He smiled, pressing a kiss to my forehead. "I get it. It's a big day, but we're in this together, okay?" I nodded again, the words catching in my throat. "Yeah, together." Later that night, after the guests had left, after the laughter had faded and the lights had dimmed, I found myself standing in front of the mirror in our hotel suite, still in my wedding dress, still feel like a stranger in my own life. Lucas had already gone to bed, exhausted from the day, but I couldn't join him. Not yet. I stared at my reflection, searching for something, some confirmation that I had made the right choice, that I had done the right thing. I waited for the happiness to settle in. I waited for the sense of relief, for the feeling of security that everyone had promised would come. But all I felt was emptiness. I turned the ring around my finger, feeling the cool metal against my skin. It should have felt comforting. It should have felt like a beginning, but instead, it felt like a quiet, suffocating weight. The thought hit me before I could push it away. What have I done? I wanted to believe I had made the right decision. I wanted to tell myself that this was just fear, that all brides felt this way, that love wasn't always instant but could be built over time. But deep inside, a voice I had been ignoring for too long whispered the one thing I wasn't ready to admit. Love isn't something you can force, and I had just promised a lifetime to someone without it. Mornings in our home are quiet, peaceful, even. The scent of freshly brewed coffee drifts through the air, filling the kitchen with warmth. Lucas is always up before me, making sure my cup is ready just the way I like it. One sugar, a splash of cream, the perfect balance. He does it every day without fail, without asking. It's his way of showing love. I take the cup from his hands, offering him a small smile. Thank you. His eyes soften. Of course. Did you sleep well? I nod. It's a lie. I don't sleep well anymore. I wake up in the middle of the night, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of a life doesn't feel like mine. But I can't tell him that. So I sip my coffee, let the warmth settle in my chest, and pretend that everything is fine. Lucas watches me, searching for something in my face. Maybe he sees it, the distance, the hesitation. But if he does, he never says anything. He just smiles and kisses my forehead before heading off to work. The moment he leaves, I exhale. It's not that I don't appreciate him. I do. He's thoughtful, kind. Everything a good husband should be. But no matter how much I try, no matter how much I remind myself that I made a rational choice, I can't force my heart to feel something it doesn't. At night, when he pulls me close, I let him. When he tells me he loves me, I say it back. But the words feel rehearsed, like a line I've memorized, rather than a truth I hold inside me. I don't know how to fix it. Lucas loves me, completely, unconditionally, and I should love him back. But love doesn't work that way. Some nights he surprises me with small gifts, a book he thinks I'll enjoy, a dessert from my favorite cafe, little things that show he pays attention. You work so hard, he says, placing the box of pastries in front of me. I just wanted to do something nice for you. I should feel something, warmth, gratitude, anything. But instead, I feel guilt. I force a smile. That's really sweet, Lucas. Thank you. He leans in and kisses my cheek, and I let him. He doesn't notice the way my shoulders tense for a second before I relax into the moment. Or maybe he does and chooses not to acknowledge it. Because that's what we do. We pretend. There's a pattern to our life, a rhythm we follow without question. Mornings start with coffee and a quiet exchange of words. Evenings are filled with small conversations about work, about dinner plans, about anything except the growing distance between us. I know he tries. He tries so hard. One evening, he cooks my favorite meal, pasta with homemade sauce, a dish I once told him reminded me of childhood. He sets the table, lights a candle, and plays soft music in the background. It's intimate, romantic, everything a wife should want. This is really nice, I say, even though my stomach is tight with discomfort. He smiles, his eyes filled with hope. I just wanted to do something special for you. I pick up my fork and take a bite. The food is delicious, the effort is obvious, and yet I feel nothing. I chew slowly, trying to find the right words. I could tell him the truth. I could tell him that I appreciate what he's doing, but no grand gesture can change what's missing between us. But I don't. Instead, I reach for his hand and squeeze it, giving him what he needs, assurance, even if it's a lie. After dinner, he takes me to the park where he proposed. The air is cool and crisp, the kind of night that should feel perfect. We walk along the path, hand in hand, and I wonder if he feels the space between us growing wider, even as our fingers stay linked. Remember this place? He asks, stopping by the bench where he once got down on one knee. I nod, smiling because I'm supposed to. Of course. His voice softens. That was one of the best days of my life. I swallow hard. I remember that day too. I remember the way he looked at me, full of certainty, full of love. And I remember the hesitation in my chest, the whisper in my mind that told me I wasn't ready, but I ignored it. I had said yes because it made sense, because he was a good man, because I thought I could grow to love him. But standing there in the same place where I sealed my fate, I realized something painful. That moment meant everything to him, and nothing to me. At night, I lie in bed beside him, listening to the steady rhythm of his breathing. I wonder if he ever doubts this marriage, if he ever questions whether I love him the way he loves me. Or maybe he already knows. Maybe that's why he tries so hard, to bridge the gap he can't quite see but surely feels. Some days I think about telling him, about sitting him down and confessing that I'm not the wife he deserves. No matter how much I wish things were different, my heart refuses to follow the script I wrote for it. But then I picture his face, the hurt that would settle in his eyes, the pain I would be responsible for. And I can't do it. So instead, I wake up every morning, take the cup of coffee he makes for me, and pretend. Because sometimes pretending is easier than breaking someone's heart. Guilt is a quiet thing. It doesn't crash into you all at once. It seeps in slowly, filling the empty spaces, wrapping around your thoughts until it becomes impossible to ignore. It follows me through the day, lingers in every glance Lucas gives me, in every small act of love he offers so freely. At night, it's worse. I lie awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, my body still, my mind restless. The room is dark except for the faint glow of the city lights filtering through the curtains. I listen to the steady rhythm of his breathing, feel the warmth of his body so close to mine, and I wonder how he can sleep so peacefully while I feel like I'm drowning. I turn onto my side, watching the gentle rise and fall of his chest. He looks content, at ease. He believes in this marriage. He believes in us. And I don't know what I believe anymore. Some nights he reaches for me in his sleep, his arm draping over my waist, pulling me closer. His touch is soft and protective. I hold my breath, waiting for my heart to react the way it should, but it never does. I feel trapped between two truths. The truth is that I don't love him the way he loves me, and the truth is that I don't want to hurt him. In the morning, he kisses my forehead before leaving for work. "I'll pick up dinner tonight," he says with a smile. "I know you've been tired lately." Tired. That's the word I use when I don't have another excuse. When he asks me if I'm okay, if something is wrong, I tell him I'm just tired. And he believes me. Or maybe he just wants to. The guilt presses heavier on my chest as I watch him walk out the door. He doesn't know that I spend my days questioning everything. I sit in our quiet home, staring at the ring on my finger, wondering how I ended up here. Love wasn't supposed to feel this way. I think about the stories people tell about love. The way it's supposed to consume you, to make your world brighter, to fill you with a warmth that can't be explained. I've felt that before, once, a long time ago. And I know what it's like when it's real. This isn't real. This is comfort. This is security. This is the safe choice I made, because I was afraid of being alone. But Lucas doesn't deserve to be anyone's safe choice. He deserves to be loved the way he loves me. I try. God, I try. One evening he surprises me with a weekend trip. Just the two of us. A cabin in the mountains, away from the noise, away from the routine. He thinks maybe we need a change of scenery, maybe that will help. "We can relax," he says, excitement flickering in his voice. "Just us." I nod. I say yes. Because how could I say no? The drive is long, but he doesn't mind. He sings along to songs on the radio, glancing at me every now and then with that soft smile of his. I try to match his energy. I try to let myself sink into the moment, to forget the guilt, to believe, just for a second, that maybe I can make this work. The cabin is beautiful, wooden walls and large windows overlooking a forest painted in autumn colors. There's a fire crackling in the hearth, a cozy warmth filling the space. Lucas pours 2 glasses of wine, handing one to me as we sit by the fire. "This feels nice, doesn't it?" I nod. "Yeah, it does." He watches me for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he sets his glass down and reaches for my hand. "Evelyn, are you happy?" The question catches me off guard. I open my mouth, but no words come out. I should say yes. I should smile and reassure him, but I can't. He doesn't look away. "You've been distant," he says softly. I don't know if it's just stress or if it's something else. I swallow hard. My chest tightens. This is it. The moment I should tell him the truth. The moment I should free both of us from this illusion. But I don't. Instead, I squeeze his hand. "I'm just tired, Lucas. That's all." His shoulders relax, and he nods, accepting my lie. But I see it. The flicker of doubt in his eyes. The quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, something isn't right. That night, as he sleeps beside me in the cabin, I sit by the window, staring out at the darkness. I should feel relief that he didn't push for answers. But all I feel is guilt. A guilt that won't go away. It was Natalie who noticed first. She always did. We were sitting in a cafe, the same little place we had been coming to for years. The scent of roasted coffee beans filled the air, and the quiet hum of conversations blended into the soft music playing in the background. It should have felt familiar and comforting, but nothing felt comforting anymore. I stirred my drink absent-mindedly, watching the foam swirl in slow circles, avoiding her gaze. "You're different," she said, her voice careful but firm. "Not in a good way." I let out a soft laugh, an automatic defense. "What does that even mean?" She tilted her head, studying me the way she always did when she knew I was hiding something. "It means you don't look happy, Evelyn. The words settled heavily between us. Happy. That word had started to feel foreign to me. I knew what happiness was supposed to look like, supposed to feel like, but I couldn't remember the last time I had actually felt it. I forced a smile, the kind I'd gotten good at lately. I'm fine, Nat. Just tired. She didn't buy it. You've been tired for months. I looked away, my fingers tightening around my cup. I had been waiting for someone to notice, waiting for someone to ask. But now that she had, I didn't know what to say. She waited. She always did. Giving me space, but never letting me run too far. Finally, I sighed. I don't know how to say this. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing against mine, a quiet reassurance. Just say it. I hesitated, then whispered the words I had been too afraid to speak out loud. I don't love him. It hurt, even now. Even after all this time. Natalie didn't flinch. She didn't gasp, didn't react with shock. She just nodded, like she had known all along. Then why did you marry him? I exhaled, my shoulders slumping. Because it made sense. Because he's a good man. Because I thought, maybe I would grow to love him. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. And have you? I shook my head. Silence stretched between us, heavy and unspoken. I could feel the weight of my confession hanging in the air. It wasn't a secret anymore. It was real. Natalie finally broke the silence. Evelyn, this isn't something that just fixes itself. You can't force yourself to feel something that isn't there. I know. My voice was barely a whisper. She sighed, watching me carefully. Have you talked to him about it? I swallowed hard. No. Why not? Why not? Such a simple question, yet I had no simple answer. Because I didn't want to hurt him. Because I didn't want to be the villain. Because I didn't know what would happen if I did. I don't know how, I admitted. Natalie tapped her fingers against the table, deep in thought. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. Maybe you need space. I frowned. What do you mean? A break, she said simply. Time apart, to see if this is really what you want. A break. I hadn't considered that before. The idea settled into my mind like a stone sinking to the bottom of a lake. Could I do that? Would that even help? What if it doesn't change anything? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Natalie's eyes softened. Then you'll have your answer. I sat with her words long after we left the cafe. I walked home in silence, my thoughts too loud, my emotions too tangled to make sense of anything. The idea of leaving, even temporarily, felt like stepping into the unknown. But what if it was the only way to know for sure? That night, I lay in bed next to Lucas, his breathing steady, his presence warm. My mind wouldn't stop spinning. Would time apart change anything? Would I miss him if he weren't here? Would distance make me see him differently? Or would it only confirm what I already knew? The room felt too quiet, the weight of my thoughts pressing down on me. I closed my eyes, willing sleep to come, but it didn't. There's a silence between us now. A silence that lingers in the spaces where laughter used to be. It's not the loud kind, not the kind that comes with slammed doors or angry words. It's quiet, slow. The kind of silence that stretches over time, widening the distance between two people who once stood close. Lucas still tries. Every morning, he makes my coffee just the way I like it. Every evening, he asks about my day, his voice full of genuine interest. Some nights, he reaches for my hand while we sit on the couch, watching the show neither of us is really paying attention to. His gestures are small, steady, and full of the love he still believes in. But I can't meet him halfway. I go through the motions, responding the way a wife is supposed to, but it never feels right. When he kisses me, I let him. When he holds me, I stay still. When he says I love you, I say it back, but the words feel empty, like a song I've memorized without knowing the meaning. He notices. I know he does. One night, he speaks the words I've been dreading. Evelyn, is something wrong? I freeze. I knew this moment was coming, but I was not ready. I turn to look at him, my heart pounding. His eyes search mine, filled with worry, with questions he doesn't want to ask but can't ignore any longer. I could lie. I could say I'm just stressed, that work has been overwhelming, that I haven't been sleeping well. I could buy myself more time. But the truth is, time hasn't changed anything. So I shake my head, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't know. His brows furrow. Talk to me. I open my mouth, but no words come out. How do you tell someone who loves you that you don't feel the same way? How do you break a heart that doesn't deserve to be broken? He exhales, running a hand through his hair. Evelyn, I can feel it, the distance. You're here, but you're not really here. I lower my gaze, unable to meet his eyes. He continues, his voice softer now. If something's wrong, I want to fix it. I don't know how. I swallow hard, my chest tightening. This is the moment I should tell him the truth, but I can't. Instead, I whisper, I don't know what's wrong. It's not a lie, not completely. I don't know why I feel this way. I don't know why my heart refuses to catch up to the life I chose. I don't know why, despite everything Lucas does, I feel more alone now than I ever did before. He studies me for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then he nods, slowly, like he's accepting something he doesn't want to believe. Maybe we should try therapy. His words catch me off guard. Therapy? I repeat. He nods. I don't want to lose us, Evelyn. I know something's wrong, and if we can fix it, I want to try. The sincerity in his voice cuts through me. He's willing to fight for this marriage. He's willing to do whatever it takes. And I don't know if I want to fight at all. But I agree anyway, because saying no feels too cruel, because I'm still holding on to the hope that maybe, somehow, something will change. The first session is awkward. The therapist, a woman with kind eyes and a calm voice, asks us about our relationship, our struggles, and our feelings. Lucas speaks first, opening up about the distance he's felt, the love he still has for me, the fear of losing what we built. I sit beside him, listening, feeling like an imposter in my own marriage. When it's my turn to speak, I hesitate. I could say what I know he wants to hear, that I'm struggling, that I want to fix things, that I believe we can find our way back to each other. But I don't. Instead, I say, I don't know what's missing. The therapist nods, patient. Do you want to find out? I glance at Lucas. His hands are clasped tightly in his lap, his jaw tense. He's waiting for my answer. I don't know how to tell him that I already have it, that some things can't be fixed, that love, when it's not real, doesn't grow. It only fades. The truth has a way of creeping in, no matter how hard you try to avoid it. It lingers in the quiet moments, in the spaces between words, in the silences that stretch too long. I had been running from it for months, telling myself that time would change things, that my feelings would shift, and that love, real love, would eventually grow. But love is not something you can force. One evening, after another therapy session that ended in circles, I sat across from Lucas at the dinner table. The meal in front of me had gone cold, untouched. He was watching me, waiting for me to speak, but I had nothing left to say. The exhaustion in his eyes mirrored the weight in my chest. I set my fork down, my hands trembling slightly. Lucas. My voice was quieter than I intended, as if I was afraid of the words that were about to leave my mouth. He straightened, his expression careful. Yeah, for a second, I considered taking it back, swallowing my doubts, smiling and pretending, but I was so tired of pretending. I can't do this anymore. The air in the room shifted. Lucas blinked like he hadn't heard me correctly. What do you mean? My fingers curled against the table, my heart pounding. Us. I've really tried, but I can't keep lying to you. His jaw tightened, his knuckles turning white as he gripped his glass. So that's it? His voice was controlled, but I could hear the tension beneath it. After everything, you're just giving up? I shook my head. I'm not giving up. I never had what you did, Lucas. You built something with love. I built something with hope. And hope isn't enough. He stared at me, disbelief flickering across his face. So all of this, the last year, everything we've done together, it meant nothing to you? The pain in his voice made my stomach twist. No, I whispered. It meant something. Just not the same way it did for you. A silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I wanted him to yell, to scream, to tell me I was being selfish. But he didn't. Instead, he leaned back, rubbing a hand over his face, his shoulders slumping under the weight of it all. Was it ever real for you? He finally asked. I swallowed the lump in my throat. I wanted it to be. That wasn't the answer he wanted, but it was the only one I had. Lucas let out a long breath, shaking his head. He looked at me then, not as my husband, not as the man who had tried so hard to love me, but as someone who was finally seeing me clearly. I would have done anything for you, he said, his voice raw, but I can't make you love me. Tears burned at the back of my eyes. You deserve someone who does. He closed his eyes for a long moment like he was absorbing the finality of it. When he opened them again, there was something different in them. Acceptance. I guess I always knew, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. I just didn't want to believe it. Neither of us spoke after that. We sat there, in the ruins of what we had built, knowing there was nothing left to save. Some truths don't need to be screamed. Some endings don't need to be dramatic. Sometimes, the quietest moments are the ones that change everything. Lucas finally stood up, his chair scraping softly against the floor. He didn't look at me right away, like he was searching for the right words, as if anything he could say would make this easier. But there was nothing left to say. I need to go for a drive, he muttered, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. I nodded, not asking where he was going, not stopping him. Maybe he needed the air. Maybe he needed to be away from me. I watched as he grabbed his keys and walked toward the door. He hesitated, his hand resting on the knob for just a second, before he turned it and stepped outside. And then he was gone. I sat in the silence, staring at the empty chair across from me. The room felt different, like something had shifted, like something had ended. I thought I would feel relief. I thought saying the truth out loud would lift the weight off my chest. But all I felt was the crushing stillness of a house that no longer felt like home. I stood up slowly, my legs unsteady beneath me. The ring on my finger felt heavier than ever. I turned it absently, staring at it as if it could give me answers. But there were no answers. Just the realization that I had finally broken the one thing I had been trying to hold together. I walked to the bedroom, my footsteps echoing in the quiet. The bed was still unmade from the morning, the sheets slightly messy from where Lucas had been sitting just hours ago. I ran my fingers over the fabric, remembering all the nights I had lain awake next to him, pretending. I wasn't pretending anymore. I pulled open the closet, my hands shaking as I reached for a suitcase. The metal zipper sounded too loud in the silent room. I didn't know where I was going, I just knew I couldn't stay. I packed slowly, methodically, as if taking my time would somehow make this hurt less. I folded each piece of clothing carefully, avoiding the thoughts racing in my mind. What would people say? Would they understand? Would they judge me? Would Lucas ever forgive me? I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the packed suitcase, feeling the weight of everything I was about to do. Leaving felt impossible, but staying felt worse. When I finally stood up, my decision was made. The truth had been spoken. There was no taking it back. Lucas might not know it yet, but tonight was the night everything changed, and there was no going back. The house was too quiet. Lucas hadn't come back yet. His car was gone, the keys missing from their usual place by the door. I didn't know where he went, and for the first time, I didn't reach for my phone to ask. Maybe he needed time to process. Maybe he needed space, or maybe, deep down, he already knew what was coming. I stood in the bedroom staring at the half-packed suitcase on the floor. My hands hovered over it, uncertain. I had spent so much time thinking about leaving, but now that I was here at the edge of the decision, it felt more real than I had imagined. Could I really do this? Could I walk away from a man who had only ever loved me? Could I be the one to break his heart, knowing he had done nothing wrong? But wasn't that the problem? He had done everything right. He had been kind. He had been patient. He had given me all the love in the world. And yet, it wasn't enough. Not because he lacked anything, but because my heart had never truly belonged to him. Love should never feel like a debt to be repaid. I knelt beside the suitcase, smoothing out the folded clothes inside. My fingers trembled as I zipped it shut, the sound slicing through the silence like a final decision made. The weight of it hit me all at once. I was really doing this. I walked to the living room and sat on the couch, my suitcase beside me, waiting. The clock on the wall ticked away the seconds, each one stretching longer than the last. I could have left then and there, but something held me in place. I needed to see him. I needed to say it out loud. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway made my heart stop. A moment later, the door opened. Lucas stepped inside, his face unreadable, his shoulders tense. He didn't look at me right away. He just stood there, the weight of the night hanging between us. Then his eyes fell on the suitcase. His expression didn't change. He just let out a slow breath, like he had expected it, like he had been preparing for this moment long before I had spoken the words. "You're leaving." It wasn't a question. I swallowed hard. Yes. He nodded, stepping further into the room, his hands in his pockets. "Tonight?" I hesitated. "I think it's better this way." He finally looked at me then, and I wished he hadn't. Because the way he looked at me wasn't with anger or resentment, it was with quiet understanding. And somehow, that made it hurt even more. "I thought I'd be more surprised," he said after a moment. "But I'm not." I gripped the edge of the couch, my nails digging into the fabric. "I never wanted to hurt you, Lucas." A small, bitter smile tugged at his lips. "That's the thing, Evelyn. You never wanted to hurt me, but you did. You have been for a long time." Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I know." He let out a hollow laugh, shaking his head. "I just kept thinking if I loved you enough, if I was patient enough, you'd stay. That one day you'd wake up and feel the same way about me." I pressed my lips together, my chest tightening. I wanted to. I really did. "But you don't." I looked down, unable to answer. Lucas sighed, running a hand over his face. "You don't owe me anything, Evelyn. Not love, not a future you don't want. But damn, I wish you had told me sooner." I wiped at my eyes, inhaling shakily. I was scared. His voice softened. Of what? Of breaking something that was never mine to hold on to. He stared at me for a long time, then nodded, as if he finally understood. As if he was letting me go in his mind before I had even walked out the door. "I won't stop you," he said quietly. I exhaled slowly, standing up. My legs felt weak and unsteady, but I forced myself to move. I reached for the suitcase, gripping the handle tightly. Lucas stepped aside, giving me space. I hesitated at the door. There was so much I wanted to say, so much I wanted to apologize for, but no words would ever be enough. So I just whispered, "I hope you find someone who loves you the way you deserve." His lips pressed into a thin line. "I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." And just like that, I walked out. I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because looking back would only make it harder. The night air was cold against my skin as I stepped outside. The world felt different, quieter, like it was holding its breath. My suitcase felt heavier than it should have, but maybe that was just me. Maybe it wasn't the weight of the clothes inside, it was the weight of the life I was leaving behind. I walked to my car, gripping the handle for a moment before finally opening the door. The inside felt familiar, safe in a way that nothing else did at the moment. I sat still, my fingers wrapped tightly around the steering wheel, staring at the empty road ahead. My heart pounded, my thoughts tangled in the silence. I had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was real, I didn't know what to do next. I had spent so much time thinking about leaving, but I had never truly thought about where I was going. The house behind me remained dark, silent. Lucas hadn't come after me. He hadn't called my name, hadn't stopped me. And I knew he wouldn't, because he understood, because this was how it had to be. I turned the key in the ignition, the low hum of the engine filling the emptiness. My hands were trembling, but I took a deep breath, trying to steady them. Then I pulled out of the driveway for the last time. As the miles stretched between me and the life I once had, I expected to feel relief, maybe even a sense of freedom. But all I felt was the ache of uncertainty. Did I make the right choice? Would I ever stop feeling guilty? Was I running toward something, or just running away? The questions swirled in my mind, but there were no answers. Not yet. The streetlights blurred past as I drove, my eyes darting between the road and the rearview mirror. I thought about Lucas, about the way he had looked at me before I left. No anger, no desperation, just quiet acceptance. I thought about the love he had given me so freely, and how I had never been able to return it. He had deserved more. He had deserved someone who could look at him the way he looked at me. And I had deserved something real. Something I didn't have to force myself into believing. I pulled into an empty parking lot, turning off the car. The silence settled around me again, heavier this time. I rested my forehead against the steering wheel, closing my eyes, letting out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. For years, I had been trying to fit into a life that wasn't mine. Trying to be the wife I thought I should be. Trying to love someone the way they deserved. Trying to convince myself that stability was enough. But love was never something you could fake, and happiness wasn't something you could force. And now, for the first time, I had stopped trying. I didn't know what came next. That scared me. I had spent so long trapped in expectations, in fear, in the weight of guilt, that the thought of an open road, of an uncertain future, felt almost too big to comprehend. But maybe that was okay. Maybe, for the first time, I wasn't trapped by the past. Maybe I wasn't bound by guilt, by fear, by the need to be what someone else needed me to be. Maybe, for the first time, I was free. I sat there for a long time, staring out at the empty streets, listening to nothing but the sound of my own breathing. The world hadn't ended. The sky hadn't fallen. The weight in my chest was still there, but for the first time, it felt lighter. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I would find when I got there. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. Because sometimes walking away isn't about leaving someone behind. Sometimes it's about finally choosing yourself.